Hello, friends. I'm your host, Shashi, with you all on Women Dialogues to create more voice for women and by women. And today's our guest, connecting from United Kingdom, from London. She's executive director, CEO of Pan African Chamber of Commerce, and what's her name? She is Miss Rhoda Harriet Khataba. She's a keynote speaker, author, talk show host, editor, producer, philanthropist, and influencer. So just think what she's not. So we are here to bring such an inspirational and having a lot of work experience with you all today. We are going to hear from her side. As she's doing a lot of work, what way she's getting inspired and motivated by her all work, what way she is doing in her community, in her workplace, and how she grew up by doing all these things. And as well as she's a founder of her Story Matters organization in London, in UK. So as well as she's having more than 10 years of experience in advocacy of social psychology, as you can hear by my all these, that she is having exponential experience and having a very sound background to inspire, to motivate us. So let's hear, dig deeper to get our motivation dose from our today's speaker. So welcome, Ms. Rhoda Harriet, on the Women Dialogues talk show today.
Thank you so much for having me. And when you read out the things, I have to keep quiet and think, who is she talking about? It sounds a lot. So thank you for the introduction.
Oh, you are, that's definitely, it's, first of all, it's a great pleasure to have you today. And Rhoda, it's something which I really found really motivating. You are doing a lot of great jobs. Yeah, and I was, by reading it, by talking about you, it was, for me, it was really a very great feeling, believe me. So Rhoda, when I'm talking about your all these work, I was reading, I was finding one thing. Let me ask first thing about her journey, the moment she grew, the moment she born, what way and her surroundings were, what were her culture, her background, all things. So please share with us about your early life journey, how it impacted you, how it helped you to become the way you are today.
Well, thank you. I had a very interesting upbringing. So I was born in Kenya, in Nairobi, and I was born to Kenyan parents, obviously. And I always, when I was growing up, there's some things that I didn't really realize. I only realized when I was a lot older. So when I was younger, I didn't realize how open-minded and how free-spirited my mother was. When I was growing up, I thought she was very strict. Because obviously you were not allowed to be outside by a certain time. And there were 6 of us actually in the house. So you can imagine how chaotic it was. So I've got, I had there were 6 children. My oldest brother passed away 17 years ago, but there was, that the house was always noisy, and I'm the 5th child. So I had 4 older siblings who are huge personalities, and growing up, you really had to be you really had to come out of your shell, because 2 of them were boys, 2 of them were girls, and they were very strong personalities. So you had to really know who you are from a young age, because everyone else is taken. You're the 5th, right? So that the house was very interesting. It was very noisy. We always had people around. And I grew up observing my siblings, observing my parents, observing, the older generation at that time. I had so many cousins who used to pop in and out. Our house was very, very busy. And growing up in that environment really taught me how to communicate, because everyone is different. So one of the things that I had to learn very early was really communicate and really listen, because there's so many people having their say. So you learn to be a very good listener. You learn to communicate as a child. And these are things that I didn't even know that I did. It was just because of the environment that I was in. And then growing up, my brother really noticed that I loved reading. So he would bring me literature books. And I used to read about Shakespeare and The Taming of the Shrew when I was very young. And he would bring all of this articles and cartoons and everything. So I was reading so much. And his English was amazing as well, so we used to communicate a lot. And I found that I really loved all of this literature and everything else, which helped me when I obviously grew older, because I edit a magazine now and I write, right? But these are influences from when I was young, things that that was around me that I saw. And my father used to work in media, which is interesting enough. And he used to do a lot of marketing and come up with ideas for advertising. So he was very creative and he was very artistic. And I grew around that. He was a very eccentric person as well. And my mom was kind of the serious one. And because she worked in the financial sector, so she was always thinking, she was always business minded. And she used to travel to India a lot to buy fabrics and different clothes and shoes and everything, because my mother loves, she loves fashion, and she would sell that. And so I grew up in an environment where it was very different in every way. Everyone was very diverse. And I really soaked that in, because as a child, I was really observing that and I was watching that. And I also grew up in a way that my mom always says to me when she sees what I'm doing right now, she always says that when I was really young, I used to host people in our house. I used to host my friends in our house. And she would say that they would come over and she would find all of them sitting in the house and we're having a conversation. And I used to host them. And she used to look at me and think, what is this child doing, right? And at that time, she didn't understand what I was doing. I didn't even understand what I was doing. And even as a child, I used to stand up to bullies. If anyone was bullying anyone, I would go and stand up. And my mom would look at me and think that, she didn't understand what kind of child that she had, because at that time, the way they grew up was totally different.
Right.
You're not supposed to speak, you're not supposed to do all of those things. But I was very outspoken. And I made everyone know what I was thinking. When I was upset, people would know. So I was very communicative. So growing up, it was very interesting just to hear the way they describe me, because I'm just a mature version of the child right now. With that's what I say. I'm just a mature version of the child.
You describe very well. I was just reading what I found about your biodata, but you describe and you made it more sensible what you are today and your personality.
Yes. And I think when people grow up, when the children grow up, the environment is so important.
Yes.
And we're realizing that now. But back in the day, they didn't know that. And my mother was very unusual, because she came from a family where she was empowered by her father. So her father would spend time with her and teach her about business and teach her about farming, because my grandfather used to farm and trade with Great Britain, and he would be selling coffee and pineapples and all of those things. So my grandfather would sit with my mother and teach my mother business and everything else. And when my mother was growing up, when she got to age 14, girls at that age used to stop the education, so they wouldn't go any further. And my grandfather wanted my mother to be a teacher, so they took my mother to be interviewed, and she got the job. But the principal in the school said to my grandfather that this is going to be a waste, letting her to be a teacher. Let her finish her education and see what she becomes. So my mother was the first woman in her family to actually have a full education. And she ended up working in a bank. So it was a very when I look back, it was very unusual because that never used to happen. And my mother used to run businesses at a time when women were staying at home after having children and not running businesses. There's an incident that my mother tells me when she went to work and her boss was saying to her, would you like to stay at home because now you have children? My mother said, no, I'm going to continue working. And her boss was really shocked that this woman was deciding to work. So growing up, seeing all of these different things really influenced the way I thought. And I did not see a woman being restricted. I saw a woman empowered by her father to do what she wanted to do. And that's what I grew up seeing. And that was normal for me until I came to the United Kingdom and saw something totally different. So that's kind of like a bit about my early life and how I grew up.
Oh, that's very interesting. And the way you shared about your influence by your mother, how you found this empowering thought process, empowering behavior, and you inculcate in your own life. It's very interesting. So going ahead, as you said, how your journey started further when you, as an adult, you grew up, you studied, I believe, and then what way how you put all your passion as having hosting a tea party for friends, and whereas seeing this media marketing from your father and bringing those finance and business strategies, learning from mother, how you bring those in your life when you really started your career, how you did that.
Well, so that's a very interesting question, because I did not see my journey until very recently when I looked back. And then I saw my mother, I saw the influence of my mother, my father, my brother, my sisters, and my whole family in who I had become. So when I came to London, I came here and I studied business and finance, obviously, because of the influences that I had. At that time, I didn't have any interest. I didn't have any interest with media or the arts. I was very creative. I used to design clothes and lingerie, but I was doing that more from a business perspective, because obviously what I saw my mom doing. So when I finished studying, I went and started working in corporate, and I did not like it because I didn't want anyone to tell me what time to come into work and what time I could go home. I didn't like someone telling me how much money I could earn and when I could go on holiday. Those things were very restrictive, because when you're growing up as a child, you don't realize that when you work for someone, they control your time. They control your, they control how much money you make. And for me, I didn't like that. I thought to myself, well, this is really frustrating. And one day I just woke up and I sent an email and I quit, and I just never went back. I did not know what I was going to do. All I knew was I wasn't happy there. And if I'm not happy there, then there's no point in me going back in there. So I tried to find, what I could do. And I started working in retail, which was like the easiest thing to get to as I figure out what I want to do. So I started working in retail. I tried working in a coffee shop, but I did not last because it was just so much work. It was it wasn't for me. It was very fast paced and, very stressful. So I went to work in retail. When I was working in retail, I got very interested in, merchandising and the whole fashion industry. And I got introduced to so many different people who were in the fashion industry. So we started
Yeah.
Okay. So I got into merchandising and I really enjoyed it. Got into the fashion industry and was working with different photographers and models. And in the process, I started a dance school because I was very interested in dance. So I started a dance school. I used to teach dance in the weekends because it was very flexible, and I chose what time I wanted to work, and it was fun. Um, and then in the process, I met someone who was doing beauty pageants and asked me, "Oh, would you like to do this with me?" So I said, "Okay, yes, let's do the beauty pageants," And I got involved in running the beauty pageants, and I saw how young girls they had low self-esteem, and it really surprised me because they were beautiful and they looked stunning, but then they had the self-esteem. And I started to reflect so much about how I grew up, because when we grew up, we didn't even think about how our bodies looked. We just grew up.
Yeah.
No one really cared about that, no one really cared. We had people of all shapes and sizes, and I saw these girls really concerned about how they looked, and that really bothered me so much, because I thought to myself, well, there's an issue here with self-esteem, right? Because I've never been in a place where I had to question how I look. I didn't grow up with magazines, looking at magazines thinking, oh, she looks nice and I don't. I didn't have that, so I never really questioned how I looked, but they were questioning how they look. And I found that very, very interesting. So during that time and being in that environment, we were invited to speak about the event we were doing. And when we got to speak about the event in a broadcasting channel on Sky, one of the producers looked at me and said, "I would love for you to come and work here." And I thought, I don't think so, because I'm thinking, how do you work in media? And I thought it was just a joke, right? But they were very insistent. They kept on calling me and asking me to come, and I thought, what's there to lose? Let me just go and have a look. Let's see what's the worst that can happen. So when I got to the broadcasting channel, the next phase of my journey started, and I got trained in how to produce shows. I got trained in radio, and when I started as a host, and it was so much fun. And I think this is where the communication came in from. From being a child to here, I was able to communicate. And I didn't know these were natural attributes that could be used in that way. So being in that environment, I learned that being able to communicate was key, and being able to listen was very, very important, because those are the two things that you need as a host, right? And it was so much fun. I was able to produce, business shows and political shows, and I got really interested in a different way of doing business, because I was able to meet entrepreneurs, I was able to meet politicians, I was able to work on very big projects, international projects that had international politicians and even presidents coming into the country. So it was so much fun, and I learned so much. And I got so interested in knowing all of these things, because I'd never been interested in politics. I thought politics was really hard and complicated. But being in those rooms and listening to that, it really piqued my interest, because at that time I had just started Her Story Matters, because obviously of the girls, because of what I saw happening with women. That was one of the things that made me think, okay, I'll start Her Story Matters, because women's voices really need to be heard, and people need to be able to talk about these issues that they're facing without feeling ashamed, because why should we feel ashamed about something we're going through? I mean, it doesn't define you. You might be depressed today, but in a week's time, you're fine. You might be low today, and in a month's time, you're fine. I mean, no situation or circumstance is a lifetime. So when I started Her Story Matters, and I saw how the issues that women were facing, and it really surprised me, because I thought, okay, so there's nothing in politics that really caters for women. So this is like years ago. I started researching and everything else, and I found even the international organizations were not looking at women's issues, and it really shocked me, because there were so many women's issues. Women needed empowerment, they needed safe places. There was so much that was going on with women that we needed to highlight that. And I made it my mission, obviously, because I was thinking, I can communicate, I can write, I can speak. So there's nothing stopping me from, being able to do that. And that's when, Her Story Matters started, and we started talking about these issues and sharing women's issues. And when we started, it was very awkward because people were saying to us, but why are you doing this? Why don't you let international organizations do that? And I was saying to them, but they are not doing that. Go and have a look. There's no chapter for women. If you look at the chapters of women, they just started them very recently. Most of them are not even 10 years old. It's about 9 years, 8 years old, if you go and actually have a look at it. And it was very surprising, because they didn't even know that. Every single person assumed that someone was dealing with it, right? So we had so much work, and we were able to partner with the Home Office and, Department of Trade, international organizations were able to partner with the UN, and were able to partner with AMREF. And it was very interesting to be able to see different perspectives. There was still so much resistance with regards to that, because obviously when the human rights document was written, they did not, I know you're going to love this, because they did not include a women or children's agenda. It was just about state. And it was definitely time to go and have a look at what was written and to start creating different policies that actually look at women and, safety of women, right? So it was kind of most of the work that, we got involved with, and it was so much fun being able to do that and seeing how it translates in areas of business and in politics. And when every gap that I saw, I attempted to fill that gap, because in that duration, I noticed, okay, we didn't have many women leaders. So what do we do about it? People were complaining that the policies need to change, which I agree, the policies changed, but we still did not see more women in areas of leadership. So there was a gap there. The gap is being able to help women grow in areas of leadership. Men, with men, when you observe them, when someone promising joins a firm or a company, the senior executives actually take them under their wing and start mentoring them. But that was not happening with women. So we had to fill in that gap, right? And we started dealing with women in leadership. And we also, obviously, when you start doing something like that, you see other areas that there's so many gaps, women in business, you see entrepreneurs struggling. So we were just doing workshops and partnering with other organizations to really be able to fill that gap and to support our community, because we had people who had started with us and they were growing with us. So, the organization really helped in that way. And so here I was doing the media stuff and then doing Her Story Matters. And then I thought, how can we combine this? And that's when I did a documentary on FGM, because it was a huge thing then. And it was very good. We were part of the conversation as an organization, and also being invited to help with the policies and everything else, which was really good. So that came about as well. So the next documentary we want to do is modern day slavery. As soon as we're allowed to travel, we'll be able to do that, because it's a huge thing that I don't think people understand how important it is to highlight issues like that, because small businesses might not know they're employing someone who's been trafficked, and they do not know. And it's about letting the small businesses know about this so that we can help and work with the government to actually stop the traffickers, because it is a huge thing and it goes under the radar. So that's our next project. As soon as they open up the borders, then we can do that.
That was our very interesting project, and I think you really sound the way your biodata says, and the work you are doing. It's incredible work, because, and when you are talking about this FGM, I remember I got earlier connected with Miss Uba Ali. She is from Somaliland. It's a small place, but she's one of that. And she was in top 100 BBC women list in 2020. And whenever I hear about it, I always feel why we are talking about one side, like as you said, modern slavery, and other side, modern society. Why we still need to deal or talk about it? This should
Yeah.
not be, right?
Yeah.
This should not be. Why still as a uh, female or as a small girl has to go through this process, which is not even
Yeah.
she's conscious of, she's not aware
Yes.
of what exactly it means, what it all
Yes.
about. And then later in the life, when she's growing up, when she's adult enough, and then she's understanding all these, she's having all the whole life, as you said, uh, self they're having self doubts as a model. Even
Yeah.
they're asking others how I'm looking. It's kind of self doubt, right? So it's
Yeah.
creating them always like feeling themselves low,
Yeah.
whereas they have no role
Yeah.
in that. They are not
Yeah.
aware of that.
Yeah. And it's really sad, especially when someone who has gone through that, when they
Yeah.
get pregnant, can you
Mhm.
imagine being exposed to that, and the doctors not being able to deal with it because they've not been trained in that. So it was
Right.
another area that was affecting society because these women were struggling. The
Yes.
nurses, the doctors were
Mortalities and
thinking,
all are very high
I
then.
can't
Yeah.
deal with this. Yeah. So it is a huge, there's so many things that really need to be highlighted. There's so many things that people are saying are cultural, but when you actually look at the background, it is not cultural, because something like FGM used to happen in the United
Right.
Kingdom years
Right.
ago.
Yeah.
And if we're going to say it's a cultural thing, where did you get that culture from? Because you
Yeah.
can't claim it's your culture if other
Right.
cultures if other traditions and
Right.
other countries were doing it. So it's just being able to bring this education to people who are born in an area and repeat the same thing. They're not exposed, because we bring
Right.
exposure. um,
Yeah.
if you're not exposed, you will not know. There's
Right.
some regions where young girls, because their parents want to delay them getting into puberty, they iron their breasts. Can you
Mm-hmm.
imagine how ridiculous that even sounds? Like, why would you take a hot iron on a child? You know, those are grounds for being jailed, right? Because and people do this to their own children, to their own loved ones. um, and they do it because of ignorance. When you bring in education, when you bring in wisdom, and you bring in knowledge, and you explain to people these are the consequences of what you're doing, I don't think they would do it.
Mm-hmm.
But because they don't have that information. So our job is really to bring that information, create the awareness, and to
Mm-hmm.
really bring change from a community perspective. Yes.
Right. Yeah, that's so important. And when we are talking about it, your organization, as you mentioned, her story matters, and it is working quite long. So you might have bring a lot of issues, lot of stories as well. Would you like to share maybe some stories, or maybe one or few?
Oh
How
my
it
goodness. Um, would you like me to share like stories that have
where you
that we've
found that was really like something out of the way. It was difficult, but you did that. Maybe.
okay. Um, so maybe challenges that I faced, like
Yeah.
running the organization.
Right.
So I
Right.
think
Definitely.
um, so I think one of the things, one of the challenges, the main challenges for me was being able to articulate what we're doing so that people can understand it. And I think when you're doing something very creative and innovative, because it's something different, it's hard for people to be able to understand it. And
Mm.
because they don't understand it, it's really difficult for them to be able to really be part of it. And it took a while before people
Mm.
actually understood what we actually do. Um,
Mhm.
because most of the companies would say, well, this is the product that we sell, and this is what the product does.
Mm.
But when you're talking about creating awareness, from someone like you would understand because of your political background, you understand
Mm.
being able to create awareness, the process of policy making, and then being able to bring change, and then being able to educate communities. So that is one side of kind of like what we do. And then the other side, obviously, is being able to highlight women and celebrate women and the amazing things they're doing, because women's voices need to be shared, like you're sharing mine, right? So one of the biggest challenges that we faced, or one of the hurdles that I faced, I remember one time I had been invited on television, and it was just meant to be, an easy topic. We're just, it was a women's show, and we're just going to talk about, the latest in, on newspapers and everything like that. So on that particular day, when we had our session, someone had brought in the newspaper, and one of the stories that were being shared was how the Western women are having their labiaplasty, so they're having their vagina reconstructed. And within our so within our conversations, there was that narrative of, why would we be promoting this on one hand, and on the other hand, we're condemning FGM. So some people were saying it's something similar, but because I understood the background, it's not something similar. Reconstructing your vagina is different, completely different from having all of it cut off and sewn up, right? And as we were having that conversation, it was on, we were airing live, actually. Some of the men called in, they were so upset. They were so upset. They started abusing me on national television. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, I don't think so. And because I was not agreeing with them, they felt the need to attack my origin. So they were saying, I'm not African because I don't look African. And I was like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. First of all, Africa is a massive place. People all look different. It's not one size fits all. That is the dumbest thing that I've ever heard, right? You cannot attack how I look and say that I'm not from Africa. And then the other thing they were saying is they were advocating for FGM. And I was thinking to myself, why would a man call in so pressed that he feels the need to attack women on television who are creating awareness on a particular issue that brings so much issues to women? And I saw that we had a huge problem as a society, because it's an element of control. Why would you want to control the other sex? Why do you want to control the opposite sex? And what they do with their body has nothing to do with it, because it's not your body. And that really, it really fascinated me, because I began to see a deeper sense, a deeper issue as to why we're still having that conversation. And some of them, based in the UK, they were still saying how they are still sending their daughters back to Africa to have it done and then come back here. And I was thinking, that is an offense, and you can get locked up, and you've just admitted this on national television. You see, there's a problem. There's a huge disconnect, because as much as we're saying, why would people still do this? People don't understand that you cannot do that anymore, and you can get locked up for doing that. It's actually a crime to do that. And someone actually being proud of saying that I sent my daughter to have it done and come back, really, knowing the effects that this has, and you're saying it in a really proud way. Did you ask your daughter if she wants to have it done? And just seeing all of those made me realize that we still have a long way to go in dealing with women's issues. We still have a long way to go. We really do.
That is the reason we are here, because I believe we need to speak about ourselves. We need to create voice for ourselves, and we need to create voice for many those silent voice, those are hearing and watching us. And from this way, we are trying to reach to them, to make them understand, to make them get their vision, to get insight, to get knowledge, and to get better themselves, the way, whatever way they want to be. So that is really interesting, Rhoda, what you are talking about, the work you are doing. As you shared about your childhood journey, the impact of your having elder siblings and being younger one. I think that's interesting one because it's related somehow to my childhood. So I was bringing my those moments in my mind when you were
Yeah.
talking about. So, Rhoda, here the question comes when we are talking about it. It seems like yes, there was a moment those give you to develop your leadership style. But when we are talking about today, how you define your leadership style at the moment?
To be honest with you, I think I have a very interesting leadership style in the sense that because I have really learned to work with people. I have come across different cultures
Mm-hmm.
and really different communities, and I realized that the way someone has been brought up really makes a huge impact with regards to how they hear, what they hear, and how they respond. So I might say to you, I really love your hair, but you might hear me saying something totally different. So the dialogue I give you and the dialogue that you are playing in your mind is totally different. So
Mm-hmm.
I am one of those leaders that I don't consider myself having a leadership style. I consider myself very creative and very versatile, and I work with people where they are. Um, because it's about them, right? It's not really about me. And I think as a leader, you need to be able to inspire and mobilize people to take action for themselves, not just for you. Because if they take action for you, after 5 years, they'll get exhausted. They'll be like, well, I've been doing this for you for 5 years. So they have to feel empowered and realize they're doing it for themselves. And whatever
Mm-hmm.
they do within the team is really for themselves and not for me. It
Yeah.
really is for you at the end of the day. Um,
Right.
so I would say that is kind of my leadership style. I know it might be so out there because I talk about leadership a lot. And some people prefer certain leadership styles. Some people prefer, being democratic. Some people, prefer being bureaucratic. But I don't really look at it like that because, for instance, if you're dealing with someone from Japan, you will have to be a certain way because they're very precise, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're dealing with someone perhaps from Asia, you'll be very flexible because they're very flexible. You know,
Mm-hmm.
um, people are very diverse. They're very different, and I suppose being able to do what I do has really afforded me those opportunities and just really being able to grow every single day.
Right.
One of the things that I usually emphasize is I make sure that I communicate very clearly. I ask if people have any questions, and then from there we can move.
That's
Communication is so
that is
important to
really
me.
empowering. I think that is really empowering way to have one of leadership style, the way you shared that empower others, and that's way you found your you know growth and success and your own leadership. Uh, so,
Yeah.
Ruda, that's sounds very empowering. As I said, how the way you found having this kind of women dialogue talk show on this platform is important and needed.
Um, First of all, I think we need so many platforms talking about women and giving voices to women.
Mhm.
There's so many things that we need to be able, before we started this recording, we were talking about different perspectives, right?
Right? Yeah.
And what you see is determined by where you're standing, right? So
Right.
what you see where you are is determined by what you're seeing, from where you are, your vantage point. If it's
Right.
very high, you're seeing it from a bigger perspective. If it's
Right.
very low, you're seeing it from a very small perspective.
True.
And I think we need both perspectives. We cannot just
Mhm.
have an eagle viewpoint. What I really like about this platform is that you have very diverse voices. You have women from different backgrounds, different nationalities, and I think that's really needed um, for other women to hear other women's journeys, so that they can also be able to sit down and piece back, think, this happened to me, oh, this is why I'm like this, and it helps you so much to be able to really discover yourself. honestly, being able to listen to other people and play back and think about the conversations helps you know who you are, or helps you
Right.
see where you even have issues with something, because you might never know you have that
Right.
issue until it comes
Right.
up. Um, and I think it also helps people to be very open-minded. We live in a world where people are very closed-minded, and I think we need to be a lot more open-minded. And when we talk about people being open-minded, I'm not saying be easily influenced. I'm just saying be able to listen to the other point of view and not judge it. Just say, okay, that's how you feel. I've listened to you, and that's fine, right? I think we live in a world where my perspective matters. What I'm saying is what counts, and people don't have dialogue. So that's what I love about this platform. You have dialogue, you have communication. I think it's very important. I think it's needed, and I hope it grows even more.
Thank you. Thank you for having such faith and such kind of, enthusiasm, and giving me motivation to pursue and continue my passion and journey for, this globally, for a lot of beautiful women. And they all have something special to share with us, I believe, and something special to teach us, as we all
Yeah.
have. So thank you, Rhoda, for having such faith. And thank you for joining us today, sharing your wisdom, sharing your journey to motivate and inspire others, that we all are together in this journey. When we have this beautiful life, we have all these ups and downs, and we can find our way to grow. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And thanks to all our viewers and audience who are listening and watching us. We all are here, as I always say, in this life, in this journey. We are together to grow, to develop. So whenever you feel somewhere low, we are here. Listen are these beautiful speakers, their life journey. They are here to share about their experiences. So you no need to look back. Find your journey by hearing and learning from these experiences by these beautiful speaker. And with this same way, I will come next time with more, again, more and more, our wonderful, beautiful speaker, as like today, our Miss Rhoda. So keep motivate
Thank you.
yourself, keep inspiring, and keep growing. And same time, please share, subscribe, and like to keep us this journey for you, for us, and for our speakers. Thank you. See you next time. Stay safe. Take care.